So all that requirement is saying is just basically get some data from an API and prove that you know how to call an API, parse that response, stick it on the screen. So we go to MyJson API, and you guys can see that you guys can create it by yourselves whatever structure you want it to be. Just enter some JSON right here, right? We'll say class name is Sierra, for example. Then we save it. Then we get this thing right here. We paste it in a new tab. What do we get here? That's a JSON object, right? So I've already created one. Here's already one I created. Okay, I promise you, I just Googled a tweet object. I stuck it in MyJson, and then I created it. So now we have the URL. So what this requirement is saying right here is saying, hey, please upload some sample JSON. Prove to me that you guys know how to structure a piece of JSON, right? Stick it on an API, call it, parse it, stick it on the UI. Stick it on the UI. So here, let me show you my app. Here's my JSON. Here's my app. I've been wanting to play around with this part. This is what I did this one. I didn't even care about the other ones. Also some animations. Dope. Okay. So the objective here, right, is that we have a URL. We have a URL. We call it. We just call it like I do on line 74. Okay? Call it, get the response, look at the data, and then do something with it. Okay? Look what we're doing on line 76. Are we doing anything with this data on line 76 on the right, guys? Inside of script.js.
Can we see it? Can we see the set up function?
Set up app?
Yeah.
So this is just focusing the input. It's focusing the input when the page loads. And then this one right here is what? This is something else. Don't even know. Like, this is something else. This is some of the magic it took for me to implement this feature, okay? You guys can read the code if you want, but I don't suggest you guys do that. What does this do? How can I do this? Okay? This is some of that magic right there on line 61 through 69, okay? JS gets more complicated. HTML gets more complicated. CSS also gets more complicated. So ignore that. What I'm trying to tell you is that define a function, for example, get tweets. And I'm telling you right now that this get tweets does nothing. All it does is get the data. Because I'm trying to prove to you guys that I know how to get data. So watch this. On line 76, someone give me a color. Pink. Okay. Okay, so now someone else give me a superhero. Catwoman?
Yeah.
Catwoman. Save the page, refresh. I've proven to you that line 76, it says so right here, is coming from the console log on line 76. Okay? So what Charles wants to do is do something like this. Data.results.map, and then render something on the screen. Call some function. Just do that. Do what you've done like 50 times now, okay? It should be really easy at this point. It's super easy. So this way, you guys can look at this as like maybe like how you guys get your initial data, okay? Have some default data, and then when the app loads, call that API, get that data, stick the tweets on the screen, potentially. Okay? Do you have any questions so far?
I don't understand how can we add the data from our JavaScript file to JSON file.
Okay, let's try this then. Let's just imagine we had application. We have some data here, right? Current high score, for example. What is this inside of? How can I get that out?
JSON
Local storage dot get item app state. Does that work, guys? Is that good enough?
JSON parse.
Yes. JSON.parse. Actually, though, now that I think about it, for what we're trying to do right now, this is exactly what we want. So we're just going to copy this. Yeah, we're going to copy this right now because this is actually JSON. This right here is JSON. This is exactly what we want. So now we go to MyJson API. We click it. We stick it in here. We save it. Now we have a URL. If we go to it, now we have an API.
But we have to do it manually.
So right now, do you know, until we learn how to build an API, yes, this is how we're gonna do this right now. Does anyone here know how to build an API other than Qua?
Oh, you mean like the backend stuff?
Yes. So can you set it up so I can go to my.com and then I get a JSON object that has 20 records inside of it? Can you set that up in 15 minutes for me? How long do you need? Can you do this today?
2 hours?
Okay, so I want to go to www.my.com, right? Let's just say my.com, and I want you to give me back. I want this to accept a request and then give me back this object. Can you do this in 2 hours? So let me tell you something. None of you can do this. With all due respect, you guys don't have the skills or the training to do this yet. And if you fail the course, you will probably still not have the training, although you may get the training elsewhere. So this is what we're going to figure out how to do in the second half of class. Okay? But for right now, extract it out, paste it in manually, and until you learn how to build an API, we're going to use it this way. Do you have any questions?
So as a good test case, we should put like an example tweet.
Yes, that's exactly what.
Just for example, like just as a reason what we should be putting in there.
So, yeah, exactly.
We put an object that we want to take into our array as an example.
Exactly. And get that data from the API. Don't store it in local storage at first. Call the API, get the data, parse it, stick it in your UI. That's the requirement. So you're trying to say, make sure that you know how to call an API. And the thing is, if you guys can't do this in like 5 minutes, man, you guys are gonna have serious problems very soon. I guarantee you, it's 4 lines of code. If you guys don't know how to do this, you're gonna have very serious problems very soon. So this should be a very simple requirement, to be honest with you. This is just mainly copying and pasting. What I do, I just grabbed the object out of my local storage, I copied it, I pasted it in my JSON, I got the URL, and then we called that URL. Very simple.
Okay,
Hey guys, let me show you one more thing, okay? Guys, let me show you one more thing, okay? Because it's something I can see that a couple people have been struggling with, okay? So we're gonna go into a pricing page. I'm gonna open up my code editor, and then we're gonna talk about some code real quick. Does anyone here, can someone here explain to me what these things are? What are all these things right here?
These are like the Bootstrap default.
Can you tell me more in more detail what they do? How do they work together with CSS?
The variables.
Yes. They're variables, and we can consume them. Okay, so let's think of an example. I'm going to refactor this code using this, okay? So just know that when we look at our computed values, we can see exactly which file it's coming from. This is coming from the Bootstrap CDN right here, right? So I'm going to refactor this code, and we're going to learn as we go. So it's very common whenever we're building a website that we have a certain amount of colors that are just everywhere, right? And this is a contrived example. Let's look at what app this is. Which app is this, guys? Our pricing page, right? So there are several different places in which we choose to use a color red, right? So, for example, on line 42 and line 53, it's the exact same color. So imagine if we want to change one to blue, right? We jump back to our UI. We can see that certain things are blue and certain things are still red, which is a problem. We can do it manually. We can jump over here and switch every single place. But obviously this app is a contrived example, right? This is a very simple app. Other apps you will have dozens of files across many different folders, and this is gonna be easy to fuck up, okay? So what I'm trying to show you here now is that the easier way to do this is to define CSS variables. So what we do is we target an element called root, :root, this is the syntax. And to define a variable, it has to start off with --, the name of the variable, red, and then the color that we want. So in this case, this color. Later on in our CSS, we can consume this variable. So we type in var, and we call it, and then we type in the name of the variable. What did we call it a few moments ago, guys? Red. And then you guys can see that I have a tool that automatically highlights it for me, and it says that this is understood. Okay, so if I save it now, you guys will see that it respects all our reds right here, right? So now, notice how if I change this to blue, this thing did change to blue, our header, but certain other things did not, right? So now, if we consume that variable again, in all the places that are red, now they're all blue, except for obviously the images. So this makes it much easier later on to refactor. So I can change it on one line, right? So we do green right here. Now you can see that by changing one variable, by changing the definition of a variable, we have updated many styles throughout our application. Okay, so I'm giving you an example right here. This is what it's called. It's called a CSS variable. All right, do we have any questions, guys? Any questions?
What's the kind of naming convention of those kind of things? So like you put red there.
Normally you
like brand color or like, do you know what I mean? Like let's say I've got brand.
Yeah, so you should
Red or whatever. Like.
Don't call it just red. You're gonna run into a bunch of fucking problems. Call it like royal blue, aqua blue, something like that. Smoke gray, charcoal, something like that. You gotta Google some colors. I don't know every color in the world for real, to be honest with you. So just that's why like you guys will see that when you guys look at color palettes, they usually have names because like this is a very common problem, you know. So like you gotta give it a more explicit name. Yes.
Does it work with all CSS libraries?
So that's actually a great thing. Thank you for mentioning that. So there's actually another thing on the internet. It's called Can I Use? Can I Use? Okay. So if you guys type in CSS variables, you can see that this will work across Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, Safari, blah, blah, blah. Where does it not work? Exactly. So now you guys know why developers and people always complain about why IE sucks. Don't use it. Download Chrome. Okay? Because IE quite literally cannot support certain things. If I were to give this URL to someone who is running on Internet Explorer, this would not work. This would. I don't know, to be honest with you.
Are people still using Internet Explorer nowadays?
Some people do. The reality is some people do.
To download all the browsers.
So I'm trying to say is now you guys have a real example that you guys should, like when you guys are hearing like experts tell you that don't use Internet Explorer, please download a different browser, they mean it. I'm meaning it. And if someone tells me to refactor all my entire code base to make it work on 1% of the population who's still using Internet Explorer, at that point I say, okay, you know what? I don't want to do that, so you could fire me. That's kind of like what you can do right now. Or I can quit, because if you want to do this, I'm gonna choose to quit. Okay, I don't really care. Because if you guys work hard enough and you become software developers, you guys are allowed to say that. And then your boss, who cannot find someone to replace you, he's gonna say, okay, you're right, Loy. Okay? So I'm trying to tell you right now is that you do not need to make your app work on every single browser in the world. That is fucking impossible, right? That is impossible. And you do not need to use the oldest versions of everything in the world so that you can make it work on every single browser. That is impossible.
So it works on 80% of all the codes.
I think this would work on like, I don't know. So now we need to,
It just says it there.
yeah, global usage is 81%, right?
My
So,
question was like, does it work on other CSS libraries?
so all CSS libraries, all the advanced ones are already using this, yes, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. This is CSS. This is bigger than a single library.
So those colors come from the root.
Yes.
From Bootstrap.
They have already defined it, and then we overwrite it. So let's look back at what happened right here, okay? Let's look back at this. So you can see that Bootstrap already, if you hovered over this right here, do you see it says maxcdn Bootstrap. Bootstrap already went ahead and defined this because they already have their own custom palettes, right? But imagine we want to build a website. And you know how this thing I keep talking to you guys about? Colors and shit? I want to see those. Well, guess what? We need to define our own colors and consume them throughout our app. So yes, Bootstrap defined it here. We define our own. So we can overwrite them. Think about us overwriting them or adding additional variables. All right, so now you guys can see, I'm just gonna change this bad boy back to red. Oops. I want that one. I want this one right here. I'm gonna copy this line. Now it's just imagine like one day it's gonna be so much easier if you ever decide to change your color scheme to change this. You know, you can change every place that's red so much easier. All right, you guys get to work.